All right, everybody, welcome to your Book Show on this. What is it? It's Monday afternoon. I'm in sunny Southern California. There we go. We've got me twice. We'll mute me over here. All right, thanks for joining me. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you're getting a great start to your. Hope you're getting a great start to your week. I'm looking forward to this week. It should be a lot of fun. All right. Let's see. Today we're going to talk about some of the executive orders that the Biden administration have passed. General assault on business and on whatever's left of our free markets, whatever's left of our markets. None of them are free. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Afghanistan and what is going on over there, and our retreat from Afghanistan, and what that means, and should we care, and what is the right thing to do, what is not. All right. Ali is in the house, so yesterday Super Chat was pathetic. So hopefully, with Ali back, we will do better this time. So it's up to you guys. Of course, I am open to answering your questions. Questions are pretty much anything. You can, yes, you can ask those questions using the super chat right here online. Let me just clean up the desktop here so we can get everything in order. It's a little weird because I have to, usually I do this stuff from a. Usually I do this stuff from my big computer with huge screen real estate, and now I'm doing the shows from my tiny little MacBook Air and with my 12-inch screen, and it's just a little different. So managing everything, managing the real estate, managing everything else. All right, as you know, Ali has a goal of $400. That's a minimum, and we're starting out, so. Valdrian says wait 2 minutes for people to show up, but we don't have time to wait for people. If they want to hear the show, they have to show up on time. Do I regret voting for Biden yet? Since I didn't vote for Biden, I do not regret voting for Biden. Since I didn't do it, so I have nothing to regret. Do I regret advocating against Trump? Yeah, no. I don't regret advocating against Trump. I still think Trump losing was a good thing, even if I don't think Biden winning was a good thing. I say this like every 2 shows, and yet it doesn't register. Arthur regrets voting for Hillary and Biden. All right. Yeah, Puerto Ricans don't vote for president. So as a Puerto Rican, I don't vote for president. But I'm in California right now. It's not binary. You can not vote. You don't have to vote. You can sit it out. You can prefer that both candidates go to hell and never achieve it. The reality is binary. One of them will become president. But since any one of our votes doesn't matter that much and doesn't change that much, I don't know why you get so excited about who votes for what. One of them was going to win. No question, one of them was going to win. And I did not want Trump to win. So wasn't excited about Biden winning, but I did not want Trump to win. And both of them were so bad and so evil, I wouldn't have voted for either one of them, even if I could. So that is the reality. Remember that argument from authority, what the hell? Remember that Ayn Rand in 1980 did not vote for Ronald Reagan or Jimmy Carter. She sat out that election. I think if not voting for Ronald Reagan, who was the best president this country's had in a long time, if not voting for Ronald Reagan was okay for Ayn Rand, then I think I cannot vote for Donald Trump. Okay, let's see. Yeah, a lot of distress out there. A lot of we've shaken the leftists up a little bit. I mean, every single, it looks like blogging leftist has done a video about my appearance on Sam Seder. They all do their best, and to ridicule me and to strawman and to distort what I say and to just go out of their minds and going after me. It's great to see them so upset, and I'm happy to be in the cause of them going so ballistic and getting so upset. Anything we can do for the cause. So yes, we shook up the left. I've responded to the arguments on several videos. You can find several response videos to the debate on my channel, yeah, you can find them there. Go watch them. Many of you have already watched them. They're very actively being pursued, which is good. All right, let's talk about Biden. Biden issued an executive order on Friday with 70-something, 72, I think, provisions, different commands, different requests, different suggestions, and they were framed in different ways. Some of them were commands, some of them were suggestions, some of them were requests, to a variety of the departments of the U.S. government and to a variety of regulatory agencies that are supposed to be independent, so the president can only make suggestions. A variety of different provisions that would instruct the various agencies and the various regulatory agencies, the various departments, to institute a number of new policies or old policies and take certain actions. Most of them are in the form of suggestions because the president doesn't have the authority through executive order to tell regulatory agencies how they can or cannot behave. But since Biden has his cronies at these federal agencies, at these regulatory agencies, there's a good chance that they will fulfill some of these requests. All of these requests, all of these suggestions, all of these proposals, all of these provisions are aimed at crippling, not crippling because markets are already crippled. They're aimed at bringing more government intervention. They're aimed at giving more central planning, more control from Washington of a variety of different markets. The whole thing is done in the name of competition. They go after agriculture, tech, pharma. They go after banks, banking, transportation, healthcare, and internet services. So a whole array of industries are going to be affected by these new proposed regulations. By the way, I warned you about this when Trump was president. One of my complaints about Trump is that rather than go through the difficult, hard work of passing legislation, particularly when he had a majority Republican in the House and Senate, of actually deregulating, getting rid of regulations through legislation in his first 2 years, which would have made permanent the deregulatory effects that he was trying to have, and really bringing about real sustained long-term change. There was pro-markets, there was pro-freedom potentially, if that's what you could get through Congress at that point. He chose, as many presidents have chosen, to go the route of using the regulatory agencies to tinker with the system and to make it slightly less regulated, slightly more free, and use executive orders in order to achieve this, and use regulatory changes, but dictated by the regulatory agency itself, by the people heading the regulatory agency. The challenge with that, of course, is all of that is reversible. So as soon as the next president comes in, they flip it, and they don't have to go through Congress, they don't have to fight, they don't have to battle, they don't have to compromise, they don't have to do anything. They just flip on that regulatory switch, They reverse what you did, and everything that you did is for naught because it doesn't count anymore. And it's done very, very easily at the regulatory basis. And of course, almost all of Trump's good things that he did, Casperanza, thank you, really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. So almost everything that Trump did that was good was done through these regulatory regimes, and almost everything that Trump did that is good is going to be reversed, and it's going to be reversed by Biden, and we're seeing that in part of these 70 provisions that he wants to impose. Many of them are reversals of things that Trump had done. All right, it's kind of interesting because in his remarks when he was signing the executive order, note how much rulemaking, how much governing is done these days through executive order. Bush, everybody thought Bush was, whoa, Bush is so bad about this. And then came Obama, who was worse than Bush, and then came Trump, who was worse than Obama, and now comes Biden, who I will not be surprised at all is worse than Trump. Every president is taking on more and more and more power. Every president is using non-constitutional ways to go around Congress in order to impose their will, in order to rule, to govern, to control. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And of course, what we get is more and more and more authoritarianism and authority all concentrated with the president, which is exactly what the Founding Fathers did not want to happen. Anyway, in his comments when he was signing this executive order, Biden said, and I have to laugh. I can't read this without laughing. You will see why, because he said, "I'm a proud capitalist." I remember when Elizabeth Warren was running for president, she ran in opposition to Bernie Sanders, who is a social democrat. Elizabeth Warren said that she was running to protect and defend capitalism. See what happens when terms are not defined. When it happens when nobody in the culture has any understanding of what capitalism actually is. When everything that happens today in the world is blamed or better, attributed to capitalism, rather than identified as a product of the mixed economy, a product of some freedom, much control, then somebody like Biden, somebody like Elizabeth Warren can claim to be capitalist. So he says, "I'm a proud capitalist," but let me be clear. Capitalism without competition isn't capitalism. It's exploitation. So capitalism without competition isn't capitalism. It's exploitation. Now, what does that even mean? Competition is a product of capitalism. It's something that arises when you have capitalism. Because what is capitalism? Capitalism is freedom. Capitalism is the freedom of the individual to pursue his values free of coercion, free of force, free of authority. Capitalism is a system in which we're left free to pursue our values. And in the particular realm of economics, if you will, capitalism is a system that leaves us free to gain employment wherever we want, or whatever terms we negotiate. Capitalism is a system free to start whatever business you want, and to go into whatever field you want, and to compete or not to compete, to start a business, to grow your business, as big as it can get, to have no impediments by government or the state on doing business. That's what capitalism is. There's nothing capitalism, in definition of capitalism, the characteristics of capitalism, that directly relates to competition. Competition is just a feature, right? If you leave people free, what happens? They compete with one another. Why? Because there are opportunities. There's money to be made. Various people want to pursue the same profession, the same avenue, the same business. But if it turns out in a particular realm, let's say that in the realm of, space exploration, there's only one entrepreneur who's interested in space exploration. He's the only one. building rockets to go to space. I mean, even there we've got today competition. But imagine a world in which Elon Musk was the only guy, and Jeff Bezos and what's his name, Branson, and there were a few others were not interested. He was the only one willing to put money into it. Capitalism doesn't say, there's nothing in capitalism, in its theory, in its any attribute of capitalism to say, oh, well, that's a failure of capitalism, because there must be at least 5 companies in every realm to go after, to do something. Maybe the reason there's only one is because this particular business is not very profitable and nobody can conceive of it ever being profitable. Maybe there's only one because nobody cares. Believe me, if going to space became a value, something that profit could be generated from it, even if there was only one that started out going to space, as soon as the value creation aspect of it became real, there would be competition. Even if it cost a lot of money to enter, because developing rockets is super expensive, people would do it. Thank you, Kirk. Really appreciate it. So, competition is not an essential element, an essential component, a way in which we categorize capitalism. Capitalism is not the system of competition. Capitalism is the system of freedom, where we are free to compete or not to compete. We are free. Pierre, thank you. That's $50. That's incredibly generous. 8 more people like you, and we reached the $400 goal that Ali has. So thank you, Pierre. Really appreciate it. What was I talking about? Yeah, competition. So part of the challenge is that when we study economics, when everybody is taught economics, and we study, there's a chapter on competition and monopolies. And it is taught that an essential characteristic of markets, of free markets, in a sense of capitalism, is competition. And that to be efficient, to be productive, to maximize social well-being, to maximize utility, to maximize participants' well-being, the competition has to be perfect competition. Now, what is perfect competition? Well, perfect competition, according to those who promote it, is competition in which all companies produce the same product in any field, right? Everybody has equal information, equal knowledge, equal ability. And if any particular company raises its prices or produces a product that's slightly better than what they had before, everybody else will and can match them immediately, instantaneously. Now, not only is that stupid and unrealistic, right? I always tell audiences, take that section of the economics book, rip it out, that whole chapter, and put it in the trash, because it is literally, it's not worthless. It actually has negative worth because it does damage. Because not only is that unrealistic, you cannot have perfect competition. But you wouldn't want to have perfect competition. Under perfect competition, there's no incentive to innovate. There's no incentive to improve. There's no incentive to grow. There's no incentive to do better, to be better. Under perfect competition, all companies, there's no Apple. There's no inventing the iPhone. And if they do invent the iPhone, they never make any money on it because everybody else invents the iPhone at exactly the same time. All companies ultimately in perfect competition have profits of zero. They have just enough to pay their expenses. Note, the perfect competition fits in perfectly with the notions, even though the people who developed it were neoclassical economists, not Marxists. It fits in perfectly with Marxism that claims that ideas, management, senior management, produce nothing, generate nothing. Because if every company can instantaneously innovate can instantaneously match your innovations, then you've done nothing. It's a recipe for stagnation, and it's a bad fantasy. It's an evil fantasy. And of course, the flip side of perfect competition is monopoly. Monopoly is where you don't have perfect competition, or oligopoly, or whatever, where you have very high concentration. And where these companies now can charge what they want. They don't have competitive pressures because other companies can't match them. And as a consequence of that, quality drops and prices only go up. Now, again, this doesn't happen even when companies have massive market shares. Take Google, that has a massive market share. Prices at Google have not gone up. How much are you paying for your Google? You paid zero 20 years ago, and you're still paying zero. So the Standard Oil had 93% of the oil refining capacity in the U.S. in 1873, and prices went down every year and quality went up every year, because that's how businessmen behave. This idea of perfect competition and monopoly, that section in the economic book, is just horrific and does massive damage. Massive damage. Is destructive. Is ignorant. And is unfortunately the only section of the economics book that politicians paid any attention to in school. It's the only section they seem to know anything about. And therefore you see them constantly talking about the evils of big tech, of monopoly power. And Biden doing this is bad enough, but Republicans, particularly when it comes to technology company, are completely on board with all the provisions that Biden is going to institute, with the push the Democrats are doing in the House and the Senate, and this is going to be through legislation. So this is going to be impossible to reverse. So there are 5 bills in Congress right now that have bipartisan support to regulate and control big tech. 5 different bills. Bipartisan support. Don't tell me Republicans are these angels. And of course, many of the provisions that Biden signed in the executive order on Friday are provisions that, with regard the ones that regard tech companies, are provisions that Trump supported and that many of the Republicans in the Senate support. Luckily, Trump appointed people to the regulatory agencies that were better than Trump, and therefore they never took his much of his suggestions, advocacy that was statist and that was oriented towards central planning. They never took it too seriously, so they never implemented it. With Biden, we're likely to get this implemented. Ryan asks, thank you, Ryan, for the support. Did the classical, by the way, $20 questions like Ryan's? It's $19.99, but I give him a cent. Get priority, and that's why I'm jumping to his question. Plus, it's on topic. Did the classical economists think they were helping capitalism with their perfect competition theory because they made it seem altruistic and like it would solve the monopoly problem? No, I think they had, first of all, utilitarianism in a sense is baked into the way they do economics. It's, there was nobody who questioned that. It's just baked into the formulas, except for the Austrians who were developing at the same time in parallel to the neoclassical economists, and the Austrians were combating the neoclassicals. But I don't think they were helping capitalism. They were trying to describe capitalism, and they were trying to come up with mathematical models and trying to explain capitalism. And they came up, their notions of marginal utility, which the Austrians came up with in parallel, but used properly. The neoclassicals used it to undermine capitalism. Whoops. That's weird. Why did my phone do that? All right. Um, so I don't think they had a sense of morality or altruism. I think that, again, they had utilitarianism baked in. And this is where, if you will, the math led them. And they were very driven by math. They were very driven by trying to understand what they were seeing around. And it is true that if you produce an innovation and people then copy you and they compete with you, they drive, the tendency is to drive profit margins down. Ultimately, if you get to perfect competition, zero. But there's no question, Samsung drives Apple's profits down. And if you had 20 competitors, they would drive the profits down even more. So what they're observing in a fundamental sense is a true phenomenon. But they are now, in order to simplify it, in order to make it understandable, in order to make it mathematically possible, they have to make certain assumptions like perfect information, perfect knowledge, instantaneous, everything's instantaneous. They simplify these things, and you see that in economics all the time. And then they start taking, when they first do it, they know, oh, this is just implication, all else held constant kind of thing, but we know nothing's held constant. We know these are just simplifications. But then it becomes, well, this is perfect. This is perfect competition. So now it becomes the standard, and they forget all the caveats they put on it when they created these ideas, and then it starts serving a political purpose, and core political purpose. Then they've lost. If you think about it, antitrust laws that which fed off of this view of monopolies didn't really need the economist support. They were primarily driven by an idea of monopolies abusing their power. It didn't need mathematical proof, although it got it from the neoclassicals. And the neoclassicals then went in, and you can see economists working with lawyers to try to better define monopolies and how they should be broken up and when. You see economists all the time participating in this work of what is the optimal structure, as if Mises never wrote, as if Hayek never wrote about the inability of central planners to determine those things, and about the beauty of markets and how markets sift through these problems, and without the idea of substitution products, the idea that you're not always competing with whom you think you're competing. My favorite example of this, again, is Standard Oil. Who ultimately competed Standard Oil out of the business? Well, it was Edison, because the business that Standard Oil was in the 1870s was lighting, and it's electricity that competed them out of the business of lighting. But nobody could see that, and that's the point Austrian economists make, is you can't see the competition. And of course, what would have happened if Standard Oil had raised prices and lowered quality? Competition would have risen. So you're seeing a universe in which they drop prices and increase quality in order to prevent competition from rising. But the potential competition is always there. And the potential competition is placing real influence. It's real influence, even though it's not real, it's just potential. It's creating real influence on the behavior of actual entrepreneurs. And then, of course, it's an ignorance of what motivates entrepreneurs, and what motivates entrepreneurs is not just maximizing short-term profit. It's looking into the long term and figuring out how to best use the particular product that they have, and sometimes giving it away for free is the best use of the product, because then you discover new ways in which to monetize it. Think about, again, Facebook didn't know how it was going to make money early on. Had no idea. It just gave away a product for free and built up an audience based on that. And then over time, figured out how to monetize it. There's even that term, monetize it. How to monetize it. And but it still gives it away for free. Same in a sense as Google. I don't know that Google, when it first came out with its algorithm and offered it free to all of us in a search engine, understood the way it would make money ultimately, and where it would dominate the market ultimately is in search. I don't know at what phase in the development, but that's the beauty of markets. That's the beauty of entrepreneurship, is these things evolve, these understandings evolve, partially it's competitive pressures that bring about, partially it's just the genius of entrepreneurs that they learn as they create. That is, the creative process is a process of learning. The creative process is a process of learning. And you don't have all the answers before you start. You don't know what'll work and what won't work. You don't know how you'll monetize your success. You have to let it work out. Okay, let's see. Friend of Aristotle, thank you. That is very generous. Really appreciate it. And I see we've got some $20 questions, so that is great. This is excellent. Mr. Peter 821 writes, is your opinion that the Constitution requires the president to carry out airstrikes in Iran and Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria only if Congress passes a declaration of war resolution? If so, why? If not, why not? I don't remember the exact provision of the Constitution. If I remember right, it is Congress's job to declare war. I don't know what it means to strike Iranian bases in Iraq and Syria, which, by the way, Biden is doing in continuation of Trump's policy. If that's not an act of war, I don't know what is an act of war. So yes, I think that it would require. I also don't understand the purpose of striking Iranian bases in Iraq and Syria. This is whack-a-mole. That's not war. That's nothing. It's not police action. It serves no strategic purpose, and we'll talk about that when we talk about Afghanistan in a minute. So yes, I believe that Congress should pass a declaration of war and give the president the strategic and pass a declaration of war, which defines, by the way, what victory is and who you're at war with, and then give the president and as commander-in-chief the authority to engage in that war appropriately. Look, war should be difficult to start, and every incentive should be provided to end quickly. And Congress should declare war and declare what victory looks like, and give the commander-in-chief the power, the authority, the funding to execute the war to victory, not to whack-a-mole, not to, if we're at war with Iran, then let's go to war with Iran and let's get it over with. But why are we bombing their bases in Syria and Iraq if we're not at war with Iran? What's the purpose? Slow them down? What's the strategic purpose? What are we going to get? Right? Again, we will talk more about this, quite a bit more about this in the next. And the reason that it is given to Congress, not to the presidency, to declare war, is that war, for a government, war is the most costly decision a government can make. It is costly both in terms of lives and money. And therefore, it's a solemn decision. It's a very difficult decision. It's a decision that needs to be made with much deliberation. It is a decision that should not be made by one person. It's a decision that in a federal system with election, it should be made by the people's representatives, and it should be all three branches of government, in a sense, should approve it. Or at least two of the branches with the legal system there to if somebody wants to sue that it's not constitutional or something. It's too grave of a decision. It's too big of a decision to allow the president to make that decision by himself. So I'm a huge fan of a weak presidency. I'm a huge fan of not giving the president a lot of power, and maybe the area in which it's most important not to give him a lot of power is in the decision that he makes that is, at least in a limited government as the founding fathers saw it, a decision that he makes that has the most consequences, the most important consequences. Dan Conway told Dagny Taggart that building her Colorado branch line would be even harder for Dagny without him to compete with. There's a sense in which that's true. Having competition keeps you on your toes. Having competition gives you signals about what is happening. Having competition makes the market more robust, and the pricing signals in the market more robust. And it provides you with the incentive and the drive to do better, and it spurs innovation. I mean, competition is a good thing. I'm not against competition. I just don't think it is what makes capitalism. I don't think I think it's something that comes out of capitalism. It's something when people are left free, they compete. It's when you have capitalism, there's competition. Whether you can see it or not, there's competition. It could be hidden competition, but there is competition. So there is no. Oh, Mr. Peters 821 says section thing about war is Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11. Yeah, I don't have the Constitution in front of me, but yes, it's definitely Congress that should do it. All right. All right, that's all the $20 questions we have. So let's talk about this. Let's talk quickly about some of the specifics in the executive order that Biden passed. And remember, I've put aside voting, put aside who the president is. I always knew that Biden would be horrifically anti-capitalist, and that I thought he would be on the moderate side of anti-capitalist. I thought Trump was anti-capitalist. Biden, I knew on the issues regarding the economy, would be much worse than Trump. I mean, that was a no-brainer. Nobody denied that Biden would reverse a lot of the better things that Trump had done. It's just that is not the only consideration when voting for president. Okay, 72 initiatives. Healthcare, transportation, agriculture, internet services, technology, banking industries, and even the labor market. It was the Food and Drug Administration to allow cheaper prescription drugs to be imported from Canada, something Trump wanted to do as well, something that Trump was trying to encourage the FDA to do. We'll see if the FDA actually does it, but this is something, unfortunately, the whole drug pricing issue was one of the things that Trump was particularly bad at, and was no better than the Democrats with regard to drug pricing. So on this one, I would have to say Biden, Trump, there's no big difference in terms of drug pricing regulation. Indeed, some of the executive orders that Biden has already passed have just reinforced the executive orders that Trump passed before he left office. So in that sense, other stuff is this is the level at which the government is getting involved. They direct the Department of Health and Human Services to let consumers buy hearing aids over the counter. That's a good thing. Why can't consumers buy hearing aids over the counter? Because there's a regulation that says that they can't. So this is actually deregulating. There are a few things here that are actually good. Of the 72 things, there are probably 3 that are actually quite good. This is one of them. Yeah, we should be able to buy hearing aids over the counter. It encourages the Justice Department and FTC to revise their merger guidelines for hospitals. So they want to stop hospitals from merging. Now, why are hospitals merging? A big reason hospitals are merging is because Medicare and Medicaid have become have become bigger and bigger and bigger parts of the healthcare system, have squeezed the prices that hospitals can charge. Hospitals, their margins are being driven down. They have to gain economies of scale in order to make money. The only way for them to make money is to, in a sense, to raise our prices, the prices on people who don't get Medicare. I guess I'll be on Medicare in a few years, so I'll probably flip my political position in a few years once I'm on Medicare, right? So they, hey, Charlie, thank you. Really appreciate the support. Thank you. I look sharp. That's good. Thanks. I shouldn't look sharp. I was, anyway, doesn't matter. But I had a medical procedure this morning, so I was knocked out this morning. So I should still be suffering from that. So I'm glad I'm looking sharp in spite of that. So hospitals are merging because of government regulations, because of government control, and because of government pricing. Remember that part of the problem of hospital capacity during COVID was the fact that hospitals have to get permission to grow. So if a hospital wants to build a new wing with new beds, it has to get permission from the government, and the government has to weigh it whether they think it's a good idea and whether this hospital gaining new beds is going to be a detriment to the other hospitals in the region. So government controls, quote, competition between hospitals. It reduces it. It tries to create perfect competition among hospitals. Don't give any hospital an edge. And as a consequence, the only way for hospitals to grow is to buy their competitors. But notice that not Trump, not any other Republican, not Republican Congress, not a Republican president have ever advocated for eliminating the regulations on hospitals, for completely restructuring Medicare and Medicaid so they don't create. The last person, and here it's amazing because Paul Ryan is a guy who Republicans have learned to hate, despise. And there's many reasons to hate him and despise him. He ultimately sold out and was a compromiser. But Paul Ryan is the last Republican to propose any kind of decent reform of Medicare, and he proposed turning Medicare into vouchers. That is giving when you turn 65, the government gives you a voucher to go buy insurance. Now, let me just say that is other than doing away with Medicare completely, and you would, in order to do away with Medicare completely, you would probably use vouchers on the way to getting rid of it completely. That is the best idea anybody's had in 20 years of dealing with healthcare and the healthcare structure of the healthcare industry and with insurance companies and everything else. I mean, it's a brilliant idea and a good idea and an idea that moves us towards more freedom and towards more free markets. And of course, he did that. That was proposed in a budget during the Obama administration when Republicans were sure it wouldn't pass. So Republicans voted for it in the House. And of course, it never went anywhere. And they knew that if the Senate passed it, Obama would veto it. So they felt safe. As soon as they had a majority in the House, a majority in the Senate, and they had the presidency, nobody proposed anything like that. Anything like that. And that's part of the problem of the Trump presidency is it neutered the Republicans. It created this complete sellout of the Republican Party that advocated for nothing dramatic, particularly not reforming entitlements, which Trump did not want to do, and so. All right, let's see what else. Department of Transportation has been asked to look into requiring. Oh, listen to this. This is the level at which these executive orders go. Requiring that airlines issue fee refunds if baggage is delayed or in-flight Wi-Fi doesn't work. So I need the government to tell airlines that they have to refund my money if the money I pay for Wi-Fi, it turns out the Wi-Fi doesn't work well. Now, I have experience with this. I always buy Wi-Fi on airplanes. Sometimes it doesn't work. It's much better today. It used to be really, really bad. Guess what I used to do? I used to write an email to the Wi-Fi company saying, hey guys, I bought this Wi-Fi. Here's the receipt. It didn't work. Guess what would happen? Guess what happens in private companies? Did they give me the finger and tell me to go to hell? No. They instantaneously reversed the charge of my credit card and they gave me my money back. But no, I need the government to protect me from these evil corporations who want to squeeze every last dime out of me, even when they don't do their job. I mean, if you pay a luggage fee to have your luggage and the luggage gets lost, the airline will refund it. Not because the government's forcing them, but because the marketplace is forcing them. So much of this is stupid, irrelevant. Stuff that's happening already doesn't matter, but it makes Biden look like he's fighting business. He's on the progressive side. Now, some of this is very damaging, but some of it is just meaningless. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this right of repair. I guess so. One of the things Biden is lifting is the FTC is going to limit the ability of so manufacturers, when you build like a Caterpillar tractor and you sell a Caterpillar tractor or you sell an iPhone. I think you understand better than tractors. You sell an iPhone and you basically say, if you take this iPhone to be fixed, by an unauthorized whatever, an unauthorized dealer, then your warranty is null and void because we can't guarantee that these people know what they're doing. In order to get your warranty, you have to only do it with an authorized dealer. And that exists with the iPhone. And so some places, phone repair have Apple authorized and some don't. And the ones that don't are cheaper than the ones that do. And now this also exists, I think, for Caterpillar tractors. And some of the farmers have always complained, hey, we can fix our tractor ourselves. We don't need to bring in a Caterpillar authorized repairman to do it. It raises our costs and everything. And Caterpillar says, you can do that, but the warranty is void. We don't want amateurs tinkering around there with the thing. And then you coming to us and then we have to take responsibility for the repairers. Seems very reasonable in terms of it's a contractual issue. You don't want to buy Caterpillar, don't buy Caterpillar. Now the government is going to say you cannot require that. You cannot require that repairs only be done by authorized dealers. That's going to end well. And that's exactly what the role of government should be. And that's exactly the level at which the government should intervene in the economy. God. Right. Don't forget to like the show before you leave. We've only got about 69 likes, and yet I know that there have been well over 100 people watching, although I'm not keeping track of how many they are at any given point in time. But I'm pretty sure they're more than the 60-something likes. So please, we're at 118. So definitely we should have more thumbs up. So please just click on the like. It's easy to do. And I'd appreciate that. All right, let's see what else. They're going to restore net neutrality, or he's encouraging the FCC to restore net neutrality. It's interesting, this net neutrality stuff. Do you remember when the Trump administration abandoned net neutrality and all the leftists said, basically, the world is ending. The internet is going to collapse. Services are going to be destroyed. Big tech is going to take over the entire internet. The world is going to end. I mean, I literally remember the panic in people's voices about net neutrality, and yet net neutrality was not introduced or was reversed, and nothing much happened. Nothing much happened. And I haven't heard anybody talk about net neutrality. It was this big calling cry of the left, and whole campaigns, big demonstrations during the Obama administration. This was a big issue, and they finally got it passed, and then Trump reversed it, and nothing happened. Nothing changed. And I suspect that, I mean, passing net neutrality would have really damaging consequences on development of the internet and availability. But I suspect at this point, most companies have already adjusted to it, and that, and I remember objectivists who were pro-net neutrality. I remember free market people pro-net neutrality, and we were going to destroy the internet by reversing net neutrality, and we were playing into the hands of big tech or whatever. None of that happened, and it's pretty amazing. Also, Biden is asking the FTC to establish, FTC is the Federal Trade Commission, they're responsible for antitrust stuff, to establish, quote, rules barring unfair methods of competition on internet marketplaces. Now, this is one, and in particular, creates scrutiny of mergers. Now, this is one the Trump administration supported. This is one Republicans in the House and Senate support, and it's in these 5 bills. So this is bipartisan. Sadly, the entire political spectrum now is against any kind of, is for government regulating mergers in technology. It's just, it's horrific. With regard to the labor markets, Biden's order requests the FTC to ban. Listen, again, this is the kind of nonsense that they deal with. Non-compete agreements. It's going to be illegal to have non-compete agreements. Why does anybody care about non-compete agreements? Is this a big issue? Is this hampering the economic recovery because of COVID? Non-compete agreements? In most states, non-compete agreements are not binding anyway, like in California. But why is this such a big deal? Now, it's a big deal, for example, in the hedge fund industry. I don't want somebody that I hire, who I learn my methods, my algorithms, all of that, how we trade and everything, to just go and go to go to a competitor, and a lot of the stuff cannot be copyrighted, cannot be patented, and yet they can take it and go do it elsewhere for a competitor. But no, the micromanagers want to be able to tell employees, you cannot sign non-compete agreements. God. Now, here's a good one, right? Here's a flip side. A good one that Biden's side, just to show you that Biden is not all, or the agenda of Biden is not all 100% evil. He's also mandated, or not mandated, suggested that, because all he can do with the regulatory agencies, they're independent, they're the fourth branch of government, fifth branch of government if you could count the Fed. He is suggesting to the FTC that they ban unnecessary occupational licensing restrictions. Now that's good. Obama started to do this. Trump had an amazing opportunity to get rid of all licensing restrictions, particularly across state lines. Try to really push against this. You'd think that would have been front and center for his agenda. Never did it. It's funny because the example they're giving is an example out of the Institute for Justice. The Institute for Justice, run by people who are very, very sympathetic to objectivism, free marketers through and through, and have done phenomenal work and done a lot of work on occupational hazard. And here's the example he used. This is in Biden's statement. He said, you realize if you want to braid hair and you move from one state to another, sometimes you have to do a 6-month apprenticeship, even though you've been in business for a long, long time. What the hell? What the hell is that all about? Yeah, Biden, what the hell is that all about? So he has instructed the FTC to get rid of that kind of occupational licensing. And I guess they think they have authority over the states because it's somebody moving from one state to another. Now, note that during COVID, a lot of states eliminated this kind of licensing laws for things like nursing, maybe doctors, I don't know how much they did, in order to allow for out-of-state nurses to come into states. But if this could include nurses, doctors, lawyers, it would be phenomenal. I doubt it would be that broad. But again, this is good stuff. So there is a few good things in these provisions. Generally, most of this is centered around eliminating monopolies and reducing the ability to merge. He uses this in banks. So he wants the financial regulators to become tougher with banks and bank mergers. This would be really, really bad for me personally, if this actually happened. But think about how stupid this is. The United States has about 10 times more banks than any other developed countries on a GDP basis. That is, for the size of our economy, controlling for the size that we're bigger than everybody else. We have 10 times more banks than any other country. Canada only has 13 banks. We have in the United States 5,000. Now, you'd think that having these 5,000 banks has been good for American banking, and therefore, based on the Biden administration, therefore we should keep them. But the fact is that because we've had so many banks in our history, the United States has had 13 bank crises. Canada, which only has 13 banks, has had 0 bank crises. It turns out that having big, diversified, geographically and industry-wise, big banks is actually more stable, more economically helpful, more competitive, better for everybody than having 5,000 little dinky, little fragmented banks all over. But no, that's not good. We need to give people choice. Now think about choice as well. Think about what choice means here. Right? We're going to save basically a dead industry. If you remember, I did a show on fintech. I mean, banking is dead. How many of you go into a bank branch? I use my phone for almost everything. I mean, fintech is the future. Technology is the future. Not the little local bank at the corner. That's not the future. The future is depositing and lending and borrowing and working with large banks that have great technology platforms or banks that have no offices but only have technology platforms. That's the future. But God, let's not have the future. Wow, you're on. Tweet this. What should I tweet? What did I say that's tweetable? It's stunning. I mean, this is so regressive in every sense. Is to stop the consolidation in the banking business. Right. But they want to slow down. They want to maintain choice. This, I think, is a bone he threw to Elizabeth Warren, who's big on these things. They want to now. The Obama administration passed a similar provision, and nothing ever happened. That is, it didn't actually get put in place. But so there's hope. But it's just so absurd and ridiculous. The whole idea that the government knows how much competition is right, what level of concentration is good. Right. There's significant evidence today economically that we actually have more competition than ever. If you define the market segments right. So yes, we don't have 20,000 banks, we only have 5,000 banks. But how many fintech companies do we have? How many companies that are not banks competing with banks on banking stuff? It's just so the ignorance, the stupidity. And it's not ignorance and stupidity at the end. It's power lust. And it's playing politics. It's throwing bones to your different constituencies. It's pretending like you care, and it's the same. I mean, the only difference is that the Republicans throw bones to constituencies I prefer, but there's nobody out there who believes in freedom and who advocates for freedom. Trump didn't believe in freedom and therefore had pro-freedom. It just happens that the people who he was throwing bones to are people who wanted him to deregulate. So he deregulated, not because he believed it, not because he believed it was good, not because he loved capitalism and freedom in this country. He was just throwing them. He was just doing what a Republican is supposed to do, and he was doing what some of the people who elected him expected him to do. And at the same time, half of the time, he was undermining all of that. He was undercutting it. So the White House today wants to ensure that small businesses and consumers have access to fair markets. Where is it that they don't? What are fair markets? How do you define fairness in markets? Who defines fairness in markets? Why should anybody? Truly, truly depressing. But this is going to be, we're in for 4 years of chipping away, further away at our economic liberties. I really, really, really hope that the Republicans can retake the Senate or take the House or do something to present at least a stalemate in Congress so that anything Biden does, he does just like Trump through the regulatory agencies and therefore can be reversed quickly when somebody else comes into the presidency. And let's hope it's a non-Trump Republican who is worth something and who will actually do a few good things. Somebody says wrong. The problem with banks is they're not regulated enough. Is that supposed to be a joke? Bill Clinton repealed Glass-Steagall in 1999, which led to the 2008 recession. That is so ignorant and stupid. I've done a number of shows and written editorials on how all of that is wrong and bad, and particularly just wrong, factually. Glass-Steagall had nothing to do with the financial crisis. No other country has Glass-Steagall. That's just an interesting fact. All these countries that the left admires, like Sweden and Denmark, don't have Glass-Steagall. Their banks are what are called universal banks. They do everything. Germany doesn't have Glass-Steagall. Japan doesn't have Glass-Steagall. Canada doesn't have Glass-Steagall. Germany doesn't have, I said Germany, France doesn't have Glass-Steagall. The reason Glass-Steagall was done away with by Bill Clinton was so that American banks could compete internationally. And again, Glass-Steagall had nothing to do with the 2008 recession. There's only one Glass-Steagall bank that got into trouble, and that was Citibank. A Glass-Steagall bank is a bank that does both commercial and investment banking. No other bank that does commercial and investment banking got into trouble except Citibank. It's just ignorant. It's just something the left throws out there. They don't know anything about Glass-Steagall. They don't understand Glass-Steagall. They've never read Glass-Steagall. They have no idea how Glass-Steagall is implemented. They don't know anything about banking or about banking globally. They don't know anything about competition in banking. But they know Glass-Steagall was passed by FDR and Bill Clinton repealed it, and there was a financial crisis after that repeal. And what the hell, let's blame. I mean, I've been in debates in which this has been brought up, and those are easy debates, because that I can destroy in 5 minutes. It's such an easy one because it's so unrelated to anything that actually happened in reality out there. It's just not true. Okay, the SBA disagrees with your statement. This is Small Banking Administration. Small Banking Administration measures small business loans. The data shows only 2 of 4 of the big banks give out loans frequently. From my experience, small and medium banks are better. Are better for what? Are better for what? By what standard? Maybe they don't give out small business loans to small businesses that shouldn't be getting loans. Small to medium-sized banks can compete, particularly now with technology, with the need to embrace technology. I mean, the United States shouldn't have more than 50 banks, maybe 500. But yeah, from every perspective, it makes no sense. Now, maybe big banks don't give out small bank loans because little banks in your neighborhood give out loans that are stupid. And therefore, big banks can't compete with the stupidity of little banks. I don't know, maybe. So we've got 5,000 banks in the United States. Why should the big banks try to compete with small banks when they've got other things they could do? But if the small banks didn't exist, it's the big banks that would lend money to small businesses. I wonder if you looked at BB&T. BB&T is one of the 10 or maybe 5 now largest banks in the United States. Look at their small business lending. It's huge. And then why do we have an SBA to begin with? I don't believe we should have an SBA. Government shouldn't be guaranteeing loans to anybody, small, big. Why are small business loans more important than big business loans? Arguably, big businesses create more jobs than small businesses. If you're going to be a utilitarian, why are you supporting small businesses, not big businesses? But no, I mean, I'm happy to do a show sometime about banks and why there should be a lot fewer banks and why all this stuff about the SBA. The SBA takes a snapshot of the world as it exists today, but it can't tell you anything about what the world would look like. There are no less business loans. We've gone from 20,000 banks to 5,000 banks since the 1980s. Are there fewer small business loans? No, there are many more, even though banks on average have grown bigger substantially. Does Goldman Sachs give out small business loans? No, but neither should they. All right, let me go over some of these Super Chat questions, and then we'll jump in. We'll talk about Afghanistan and foreign policy. Feel free to continue to ask questions. We're 250, so we're looking for another 150 to kind of thank you, James, for... The process is quite difficult for minorities, women, and other people to get loans from big banks. Small and medium banks are quite strict as well. It's just not true. The data is not there. Today, for many minorities, it's easier to get loans than from non-minorities because there are whole pools that banks keep, pools of capital that banks keep in order to provide for minority-owned businesses. And big banks do more of this than little banks because one of the deals that big banks have cut over the years with the devil is that in order to merge and become big banks, they have being required to set aside large pools of money for minority women and other people. There's absolutely no evidence that it is, if you control for the right things, if you control for risk, if you control for the type of business, if you control for the person's education, if you control for everything but their skin color and their ethnicity and their sex, if you control those things, there's no evidence that women and minorities are being discriminated against. It's just not true. And the fact is that if it was true, then the best business in the world would be to start a bank that specialized in giving loans to women. Because if you did that, maybe it would be a women-run bank that only gave loans to women. Because if women are underserved by the big banks, you've got a ready population there that you can provide for, and you would make a fortune. The same with minorities, and indeed they are. There are Asian banks here in California that serve the Asian community. Primarily, they overcome the language barrier and the cultural barriers. There are Hispanic banks. Funnily, Hispanic banks have never done particularly well. And there are black-owned banks that specialize in the black community all over the country. And so, there are specific banks to serve the populations that have these problems. But those banks are not exceptionally profitable, which suggests that maybe they fill a niche. Maybe people feel more comfortable asking them for loans and depositing their money with them. But there's no big demand. There's no big vacuum anymore for these kind of loans. There was certainly during Jim Crow and in the years following that, as everybody recovered. All right. I don't know what that is. Okay. From my experience, big banks give lip service and do not deliver the capital. Definitely love a show on banks. I am on the buy side for your information. I've spent my entire career studying banks, researching banks, investing in banks, buying and shorting banks across the entire spectrum. I don't deal much with big banks because I don't have on my investment side, but I've certainly studied them. And big banks don't need to deal with small customers, so they don't provide the services because there is somebody in the marketplace that will do it and that undercuts them in terms of provides better pricing. But those small banks don't ultimately make enough money to justify their existence. They shouldn't exist. From an economics perspective, small banks should not exist. And what that would create is it would create an incentive for big banks to develop maybe small bank subsidiaries, maybe special units that deal with small banks. But also, let me say that big banks are big for a reason. And the primary reason they're big is because they've done a great job. They provided services. Whether you have good or bad experiences with them, the very fact that a company is big and has grown to be big means it's been successful at what it's done. EPO1875, thank you for the support. Really appreciate it. All right, we've got a bunch of super chat questions. We're still short about $125. So if anybody wants to jumpstart us or jump us there, not jumpstart us, but jump us there, that would be great. I would right now as somebody who's not but both looking for a loan and not looking for a loan. Grant, thank you. Wow, that's great. That helps a lot to get us to. We're now only $70 short. Grant gave us $50. I, for example, have a bank account in a small bank, and I have a bank account in a big bank in Chase. And there's no competition. Chase is 1,000 times better. The only reason I have an account in a small bank now is because I live in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico only has small banks. But it doesn't matter. Even small banks in the United States, not in Puerto Rico, have the same experience. Their technology sucks. What you can do on the internet sucks, particularly when you compare to what you can do with Chase. Thank you, Wayne. Really appreciate it. So it's, the Chase website is 100 times better than my little bank from my little bank's website. And I can apply for loans on the Chase website. I can do a lot of things on the Chase website. I get small business loan proposals from American Express. I have no shortage of people asking me for stuff, right? To help me. James says Wells Fargo is always a scandal. Yeah, Wells Fargo had scandals. They badly managed. They provided wrong incentives to cashiers. But you don't know if those things are not happening at little banks. The only reason you know it happened at Wells Fargo is because it made the news, and it made the news because it was Wells Fargo. But if a scandal like that happened in a little bank in my neighborhood, it wouldn't make the news, and you would never find out about it. So it's quite likely that a lot of little banks provided the same kind of incentives to their tellers and did the same kind of shenanigans and never got caught or never made the newspaper, so you don't know about them. So you don't know. I mean, I hate much of big banking, but I don't hate them because they're big. I hate them because they're regulated. I hate them because they are cronies. I hate them because, banking in the United States today is basically a government utility. I think I told you once that every day, I think it's Chase, JP Morgan Chase. Every day at JP Morgan Chase, 150 government employees, regulators, go to work at the Chase building, in the offices of Chase, sitting next to Chase employees, supervising everything that is done at Chase. Banking is unbelievably regulated. Every aspect of it is regulated. Every aspect of it is regulated. I mean, somebody here, there's a communist. Anybody who puts the hammer and sickle is an evil SOB, or just sick in the head, because that represents the destruction of well over 100 million lives. That is a symbol of death, starvation, and destruction. JT24, you should be ashamed of yourself, embarrassed in yourself to have that kind of handle of a hammer and sickle, and to advocate, basically to support and fly the flag of regimes. You're no better than a Nazi. If somebody appeared here and had a little thing of a Nazi flag, I would treat him exactly the same as I'd say exactly the same about him as I say about you, because there's no difference. You're the same. You are an advocate for a regime and an ideology that is the most evil in human history, and that has killed more people than any other regime in human history. Unbelievable that somebody would show up with a hammer and sickle. Disgusting. All right, let's see. Why is Wells Fargo canceling all credit lines? I haven't read up about why Wells Fargo is doing that. Wells Fargo is a mess right now, and it's got a lot of management changes, and Wells Fargo has added regulatory burdens. But I'll look into the credit lines to see if I can figure out why they're doing it, and I'll get back to you, EPA 1875. And there's also a question of whether that is even true. Just because you read something in the news doesn't make it true. Down with objectivists. That's the best you have. God, pathetic. I'm not doing horseshoe theory. I'm saying that both fascism and communism are both evil, even if you put them on two different sides of some spectrum. It doesn't matter. Now, I happen to think you're both on the same side of the spectrum because you're both collectivists. You're both murderous collectivists who will sacrifice as many individuals as needed in order to achieve your collectivist goal. Communists defeated Nazis. Communists didn't defeat the Nazis. The only reason the communists defeated the Nazis was with massive help from the United States. Stalin would have been defeated, or at least would have gone to a stalemate with Hitler, if not for the United States of America. Communists have been defeated everywhere, whether defeated by their own people internally, ultimately, or defeated by reality, or defeated militarily. But communists have never won anything without the help of the capitalists. And it's a travesty that the United States helped Stalin win World War II. Anyway, let's ignore our communist, immoral, disgusting communists. Just ignore him. Don't pay any attention to him. I think that's the best thing. A young leftist co-worker of mine saw your debate with Seda. I regularly talk politics philosophy with him, and he recently picked up Virtue of Selfishness. Any advice for him? I mean, the advice would be to read The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. I think The Virtue of Selfishness is good, and it depends on his kind of what he likes to read and what kind of reading he does. But Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged are still the best introductory texts. All right, we got a $20 question from Andy. Have you ever heard of the Village Voice reporter Jack Newfield? He wrote about cronyism, corruption regarding New York City bankruptcy in '75. Once again, interesting that someone can write brilliantly about it, then remain a Marxist. Yeah, I mean...
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Siri, be quiet. Let me just say, a lot of people are Marxists, but not communists, in the sense that they accept certain features of Marx and reinterpret Marx and change Marx and claim that the communists were not Marx by remaining Marxist. But to use the hammer and sickle means you are embracing Stalin, you're embracing communism as practiced. You're not even lying to yourself about the idea that maybe, it could be practiced differently. I do not know him, but I think there are a lot of very good reporters. There are a lot of, decent thinkers. There are a lot of people out there who have embraced elements of Marxism, but who, in certain areas of their life, are honest enough to see things and to do a good job. I mean, there are a lot of scientists that are Marxists. There are a lot of people who do a good job in a particular realm, and in other realms, their thinking is completely screwed up, as the thinking of Marxists has to be. Was the lesson with Seda that the new left doesn't want real debate, but wants an excuse to call us heartless, etc., by argument from intimidation? I don't know if that's the lesson. I mean, I don't think the new left wants real debate. I think to some extent they view, because, I mean, I debate the new left all the time, so I'm not sure what that means, that they don't want real debate. I mean, I've done dozens of debates with different people from the left on all kinds of topics for many, many years. They don't just use arguments from intimidation. They often engage in a debate, in a real debate. They want to build an audience. I want to build an audience. So it's win-win in a sense for both parties. But I did a tour in 2019 of 3 university campuses with one socialist debating him. I'm going to debating Richard Wolff. I mean, you can't say Richard Wolff doesn't want to debate. He doesn't want to be convinced because he's not open to being convinced. In that sense, he doesn't want to debate, but he wants to use debates in order to expand his audience, just the way I want to use debates to expand my audience. I'm not going into debates open-minded to the arguments the leftist is going to advocate for. Sorry, I've heard them all. They're not true. I'm not open-minded when it comes to socialist arguments. I go into the debate to get a new audience. That's the only reason. And the jokes that came on afterwards and in Twitter and everywhere else attacking me, they just found some sound bites that provided them with a good opportunity, the way they spliced them and the way they made them, to show libertarians, which they called me a libertarian, as crazy from their perspective. And, fine. I mean, the right does that all the time to the left, and the left does it all the time to the right, and all the power to them. Any honest person who listens to one of those clips and then listens to the full debate will get that I didn't say what they claim I said. Because context matters. Context always matters. Thanks for bumping The Cave in the Light. Heard you speak about it a few weeks ago. It's been fascinating so far. I mean, the 1900s in Germany part, craziest tug of war history has to offer. Yes, I mean, I'm a big fan of The Cave in the Light. I'm rereading it, but I have not gone past The Fall of Rome yet. With the renovations and everything, I've been reading a lot lately. But it's what I get back to as soon as I get back to reading. Branson's critics, how dare he use his money to go into space instead of feeding the poor and homeless? They say this is vanity and not exploration. Even if it is vanity, I don't care. It's his money, his wealth. You do not have a duty, a responsibility to feed people. You have a duty and a responsibility to pursue your values and to try to achieve your wealth. This idea that he should be using his money to feed the poor and anything else is immoral is, again, it's morally evil. It really is a repudiation of morality, which is to guide one towards one's own happiness. And you have to choose those values, and you should pursue those values. And you shouldn't. It would be immoral. I would say it would be immoral for him to have the value of going to space and not go to space and instead give his money to help the poor. That would be immoral. No, oh, we made the 400. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Naruto. Thanks, James. Thanks, everybody who helped us, all the Super Chat people today. We made it to 400. Of course, there's nothing to say we can't go to 500 or to 1,000. It looks like I won't do Afghanistan again. It looks like we're going to have to push that into the next show again. We keep pushing. Thanks for crapping on the communism. Have a donation. P.S. I sent a sort of essay to the YBS site to concretize what I really meant by upward economic mobility. I haven't seen that. You can always send stuff direct to Yaron@YaronBookShow.com. Yaron@YaronBookShow.com. That will guarantee that I get it. Okay, Daniel asked a $20 question. About to finish Les Miserables for the second time. Spoiler, in your view, why does Javert commit suicide? Because he realizes that, in a sense, he's spent in life in pursuit of an anti-value. He's pursued his life, and I'm trying not to spoil anything. He pursued his life pursued his life as an agent of the devil, in pursuit of evil. And he can't live with that. He can't live with the fact that he constantly tried to undermine and tried to destroy a good man, a good person. And he's honest enough with himself. He recognized that. I think it's his great virtue, that he can't do anything to make it up. I mean, because his whole life is built on the rule of law, no matter what. The law, no matter what, good or evil. And when he realizes that's wrong, he has nothing. He's empty. He's finished. This is a sense in which, this is a really important point. You create your own soul. The choices you make, the actions you take, the decisions you make, the values you pick. And you build a certain soul. And you do that, I think, as a child, certainly as an adolescent, and into your 20s and 30s maybe. And at some point, it's not changeable. It's not changeable. Keating discovers this at the end of The Fountainhead. Wynand knows this at the end of The Fountainhead. They can't really change. They can't go backwards. They can't rewrite who they are. They are what they created, and it's done, it's set. Free will does not mean that you can go back and undo all the things that you have done. It doesn't mean that you can undo all the bad decisions you made. It doesn't mean you can go into your own subconscious and rewire everything. It doesn't work that way. So you are what you create. And if you create something and suddenly you discovered it's rotten, and that you're at an age where there's nothing you can do about it, suicide is a real option. And this is what, and think about most people. What happens is they get to midlife crisis, is people create, I didn't want to be this human being that I am right now. What am I doing? What am I pursuing? So they dabble with trying to change their soul, but they can't because it's all superficial. And then they revert back to conformity, and they become this nonsensical nothing. They start from nothing, they rebel against nothing, and they end up as nothing. At least the people who commit suicide, at least at least Javert is honest with himself. The same with Wynand. Keating is just lands up depressed. It's why a lot of older people are sad, depressed, unhappy, because they wasted their lives. Because they're not what they would have liked to have been. And they don't know what they would have liked to have been, but it's not this. And they can't change it. It's too late to change. So this is why I keep telling you on my You're on Rules for Life, which I'll do a new episode hopefully later this week, is you got to take your life seriously. You got to think of every moment as yours to shape your soul, to make you, to build you, so that at 40, at 50, at 60, you look at yourself and say, yeah, I can be better. I can improve. But the foundation, the essence of who I am, when I say I, what I mean by I, that's good. I like. That's the goal in life, is to get to that. Right? To strive to keep improving. But particularly when you're young, to make choices, to make decisions about the core values that are such that as you build it up, you get to these ages and you go, yeah, I like who I am. Yeah, what I am is consistent with my basic values, and my basic values are good. Because if you come up with the opposite conclusion, it's too late to change at that point. And you have to create value, and one of the great values you create is you. You create yourself. There's this sculpture called Man Carving His Own Destiny. I love that sculpture because it's man carving his own destiny. Bree asked, I wanted to comment on this, so thank you for asking this. This is perfect. The freedom fighters in Cuba are trying to throw off the chains of 60 years of real communism. Will Biden support their military if it gets to that or not? If he frees Cuba, he wins Florida in 2024. I'm not sure what you mean by will Biden support whom. I mean, Biden has come out strongly in support of the people and against the regime. He's come out and said that if the regime uses violence, I'm not sure what he will do. Will Biden send in the Marines to help the people? I don't know, and I don't think he should. I'm not a supporter of using American force to help out, to create freedom in these places. But we should do everything in our power, including arm the opposition, in order to facilitate them overturning the Castro, the communist regime in Cuba. And so far, Biden has used the bully pulpit effectively. So far he's been pro the demonstrations, pro the anti-communist people, and I would say, I mean, in terms of standing up to foreign regimes, I think Biden in many respects is better than Trump. I'm not sure what Trump would have done with Cuba. Hard to tell. I mean, he might have done something good because he would have been beholden to the Cubans who voted for him and they would have put pressure on him, but not because he believes in anything. Since Russia controlled the majority of Central Asia countries in the USSR, how does China fit into Afghanistan after being endorsed by the Taliban? Well, China is developing what it's called the Belt and Road Initiative. And the Belt and Road Initiative is a massive investment in infrastructure from China westward into Central Asia, into Tajikistan, huge investment in Pakistan. China views India as a strategic opponent. Did I advocate for bombing communist countries? I didn't advocate for bombing communist countries. See how people put words in my mouth? Pretty amazing. Anyway, so China wants to develop its economic relations, its sphere of influence politically, over that part of the world that is adjacent and relevant to them. They want to promote moderate Muslim voices across Central Asia because they're worried about the Muslims within their own country. This is why they have the concentration camps for the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs are Muslims, and the Uyghurs, there's a big kind of Uyghur, in a sense, terrorist organization that now, in order to crush that terrorist organization, what the Chinese are doing is these concentration camps. It's horrible and awful. But I remember people in the West advocating for dealing with Muslims in the same way not that long ago. And by no means am I excusing anything the Chinese are doing. I think it's horrific. It's So what China wants to try to do is basically bribe the Taliban into submission. They want to build a pipeline from Iran directly to China to deliver oil and natural gas. They want to be able to build a railway system that goes from the industrial portions of China ultimately all the way to Europe. They want to resurrect, if you will, the Silk Road. The Silk Road had many branches, some of them going up further north through Russia, some of them going south through Pakistan, Afghanistan, and ultimately through Uzbekistan and into Iran. There were a bunch of paths that that the Silk Road went through, and in many respects, China wants to recreate that so that they had dominance over this region. And because China sees the value in trade, sees the importance of trade. That's why they're buying ports all over the world. They're investing in port technology, in port infrastructure. They're building ports for other countries. They want to be able to move their goods around the world, and they want to be able to buy and they want to be able to sell. It's unlikely that China would invade these countries, although they do have border disputes with India, which they view as a competitor, and some other countries in that region. But it's unlikely they'd invade those countries. What they'd rather have is influence over those countries, and what they'd rather have is the ability to trade with those countries very much on their terms. All right. Wow, we got a bunch of leftists on the chat today. That's cool. So there is a quote from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. That is mooches. To each according to his need is mooching. From each according to his ability is stealing. You take from those who produce and you give to those who don't. That's what mooching is. Did you get a chance to watch Spider's Web documentary about the British Empire and the finance on YouTube? I sent a request a few months ago. No, I know it's on my list. I just need to download it and put it on my computer, so I do it on the flight. I apologize. I will get to it. Is holding on to anger like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die? Yeah, I mean, there's no point in anger is a good thing. Anger is a pro-life emotion. Anger is important. But holding on to it, not letting it go, allowing it to, obsessing about it, allowing it to dominate your life, allowing it to cloud your thinking, that is bad for you. That is unselfish of you. And it places the other person that you're angry at the dominant position over you. They're impacting your life. They're having a negative impact on you. It's the exact opposite of independence. Independence requires that you not be dependent on other people, including on the emotions that they evoke in you. So you're angry with them. Okay, you understand the anger, you get the anger. You don't have to forgive them, but you move on. Forgiveness should only be there if there's reason to forgive. I don't forgive people who've done bad things to me and have never said they're sorry or have never done anything to update. I'm angry with them, but I don't obsess about it. I don't hold it. It doesn't dominate my thinking. I don't let it undermine my life, undermine my pursuit of values. What kind of person will strive most in an altruistic or a mixed economy social system? I mean, you get people who take their altruism very seriously and strive to make for the most. A lot of people in our mixed economy who strive hard. James, you can turn the CC on the videos. You can turn the translation on the videos. I don't have the ability to turn it on or off. I think when you watch them, you can turn it on to get the translation. But live, no, I'm not going to turn it on for live. What kind of person will strive most for altruistic and mixed economy? I mean, a lot of people who are ambitious and who want to make their lives better are ambitious and strive and work hard even in an altruistic and mixed economy. I mean, Steve Jobs didn't build Apple for the common good, for altruistic reasons. He loved it. He did what he did because he loved it, and it was for him. It's sad, and that's the truth. True in Atlas Shrugged. Dagny doesn't keep working and working and working and working because she likes the mixed economy or because of altruism, but because she loves what she does. And she believes she can save the world. Not for altruistic reasons, for selfish reasons. Okay, Landon asks, not sure James knows what you've done for your career, unrelated. Yeah, I mean, I'm a finance professor, and I run a hedge fund that invests in small banks. Small banks, right? Not the big banks. I have to do the setting after I publish it, James says. Okay, I'll look into it. Maybe Action Jackson here can look into it and set it so that people have the option to see the translation. Unrelated, what should the U.S. do if China invaded Taiwan? I mean, today, they would have to go to war with China because we have a defense treaty with Taiwan. In a free world, I don't think China would do it because China would be ostracized to such an extent that it would lose its entire whatever standing it has in the world, and it would be deemed, in a proper world, the United States doesn't just willy-nilly have defense treaties with everybody left and right, but in the world we have the defense treaty, we have to live up to it. I don't think we will, but what should it do in an objective world? Where we didn't have a defense treaty? Really nothing. I mean, you can't go to war to defend every free country out there, any more than we should have intervened in Vietnam or intervened in Korea or intervened in World War I. I mean, we're not there to defend, we're not there to be policemen of the world, we're not to defend free countries. They should defend themselves. Now, should we sell them weapons? Yes. Should we sell them very sophisticated? Yes. Should we potentially sell Taiwan nuclear weapons? Potentially, yes. So they can defend themselves. That's what I would do. I'm going to look into the Wells Fargo question. I don't have an answer. What's the best response to someone who says that you consent to the country you remain and study university in? Why? You have no choice but to remain in the world in which has borders and passports and restrictions on travel, and you don't consent to a country. That's not the way countries are built. The country, the government is not for you to consent to. It's there to protect your rights. It's there to serve you. It's there to be your servant. And if it's not, it's abrogating its job. It's just the way it is. And it's I mean, imagine if that were true. That would say that you should never argue against the government. You should never lobby for opposition parties in a democracy because, hey, you consent to the government as it is. Mine is that I'm not obliged to martyr myself by leaving. No, that's absolutely right. You're not obliged to martyr yourself. And the government is obliged. The whole purpose of government is to protect your rights. And the fact that it's not is them abrogating on their moral responsibility. James, doing simple math, I realize if global warming is real, based on current stats, Canada and Russia will benefit the most. Will they become new world powers? Well, they would if they had open immigration. They might, right? Because they would get global warming. They would get a lot more arable land. There would be a huge desire to immigrate to them if they were free. And would they allow it? But I don't think weather determines whether somebody becomes a global power. They will become a world power not because of natural resources. You become a world power because of your ability to produce, and your ability to produce is a consequence of your the freedom, the amount of freedom you allow your population, which is somewhat related to the amount of immigration you allow. So the only way they would become world powers if they became free and they allowed for large immigrations. James asks, millions of people die from poverty-related illness every year. That is a direct result of capitalism because it's not profitable to help them. Why do people like this not understand capitalism? So that's a quote. Millions of people die from poverty-related illness every year. That is a direct result of capitalism because it's not profitable to help them, unquote. And then you ask, why do people like this not understand capitalism? Well, because they don't understand that the natural state of man is poverty. What they don't understand is we were all dying. First of all, millions of people don't die of poverty every year. That's just not true. But before capitalism, we were all dying from poverty-related illness. Capitalism is what freed us from that. And what the people who are still poor, who are still suffering, need is capitalism. If you took all the money from the West and you gave it to them, then yeah, that would keep them alive a little bit longer. But it's not a solution to the long-term problem. You just make the West now poor. To solve the problem, what you need is for them to embrace capitalism. Capitalism is the only system in human history to bring people out of poverty in mass, at large numbers. So that's what they need to embrace if they want to get out of poverty, if they want to stop dying from poverty-related illness. All right, last question from N. Soma. Thank you again for the $20 question, Canadian dollars. What do you think of Canada's rules that allow for private, essentially non-questions asked, financial sponsorship of immigrants? Would this be something the U.S. would greatly benefit from? Yes. I mean, Canada generally has a much better immigration system than the United States. Many highly qualified people are moving to Canada rather than come to the United States. There are a number of countries that have better immigration policies now than the U.S. But the U.S. used to be the best place in the world because the U.S. didn't discriminate just between highly educated and low educated. Anybody could immigrate to the United States, which gave the United States a massive advantage because we had labor at all its level, from the Nobel scientists all the way down to strawberry pickers. And that kind of immigration system beats any other. But the United States could benefit from anything that increased the number of immigrants into the United States at all income levels, at all types of jobs. And the best way to do that, if you don't want just open immigration, is to have an immigration system based on jobs. If you can find a job, no matter what the job is, no matter how much it pays, if you can find a job in the United States, you get a 5-year visa to go and do the job. And if you're still working after 5 years, then it gets renewed for another 5 years. So the whole point is focus on the market dictating where there are jobs. Those are the people that come in. Poverty doesn't have to be the condition of humanity. And the way to get rid of poverty is to embrace capitalism. Always has been, always will be. The only way to get us out of poverty. There's no country in the world, with the exception of places like Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is very poor, like Dubai, which is very small, where they happen to have natural resources which they can just allocate money to the people. There's no country in the world that has gotten out of poverty without embracing capitalism. Elements of capitalism. If they'd embraced pure capitalism, they would have done it faster and even better. But there's no example in the world of a country coming out of poverty that have not embraced private property, private entrepreneurship, people choosing their jobs, and embraced elements of capitalism. Right? All right. Thank you, guys. Oh, Bry G just discovered me. If you discovered me, then go read Ayn Rand, because that's the real source of this power. The power of these ideas is Ayn Rand. So I'm glad you discovered me. I'm glad you're enjoying these ideas. I'm curious how you discovered me. Was it through how did you find me? I'm always curious to know about that. Thanks, everybody. And I will talk about Afghanistan in a future show. I keep pushing it out, but it's not going anywhere. The defeat will not be flipped, and we are leaving Afghanistan. We're doing what Trump wanted to do, what Obama wanted to do, what I wanted to do. We're just doing it in a pathetic way. If you tax the rich, you make everybody poor. The more you tax the rich, the more you make people poor. So I don't know when the next show is. Not sure. Hopefully sometime this week, but we'll see. Certainly on the weekend, but I'm not sure what my schedule's like over the next few days. And because I'm on the West Coast, I have to do it different hours of the day. So we'll see. We'll see when I can do it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. And I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye, everyone.